Nico Iamaleava has set the college football world on fire. After skipping out on practice on Friday, he has sent college football into a complete firestorm, and this is probably the biggest news to happen in the sport in 2025 so far. He is now going to be the poster child for NIL in the college football world, as just a couple of years ago, it was rumored he got a $9 million NIL deal with Tennessee before he ever arrived on campus. The five-star quarterback from Long Beach, California, ended up demanding that kind of money because of his future potential. But now, after getting a little bit greedy and maybe flying a little bit too close to the sun, Nico has to find a new school. Josh Heupel decided to show him the door instead of paying up, and now Nico has to find a new program, learn a new system, and hopefully be able to convince NFL GMs that he isn't a spoiled brat. As I said, this is humongous college football news, so today I'm going to introduce you to Nico, go through why he was worth so much money, the whole saga that just happened, and ultimately some places where I think he could end up. All of this is pretty much hypothetical in terms of where he could land, but before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about Nico. Again, I'm not going to try to say his last name because literally no matter how I say it, I cannot figure it out and people get mad at me in the comment section below. So after saying it once at the beginning of the video, we're going to go ahead and just call him Nico the rest of the time. They need to honestly teach some sort of course on how to say his name. So for the first third of the video, I want to talk about who this guy is. So Nico has pretty much always been a big deal, and he obviously comes from a Samoan household, so he grew up with strict, no-nonsense values which were imposed upon him by his father. He also came from a family of athletes, as they either played volleyball or football. It's also worth noting, his little brother Madden was a 4-star quarterback in the class of 2025, who's actually going to end up at Arkansas. He's also the cousin of former 5-star quarterback Nico Iamaleava from Clemson. At 6 years old, Nico was ridiculously competitive and would eventually start to look up to guys like Tua Tagovailoa. At 15 years old, he had an unbelievable arm and was actually seen as a volleyball prodigy. He's considered the #1 volleyball recruit in the country, but football was actually his future. As a freshman, he played a little bit for Long Beach Poly High School, but would eventually move to Downey Warren High School for his sophomore year. He had a spectacular season on the field and at camps, but it wasn't without difficulties. He ended up having such a crazy stiff arm that blood ran down his arm, and apparently he had a compound fracture. It was supposed to take a couple of weeks for it to heal, but he pretty much had it healed in no time. In his first game back, he threw for 6 touchdowns, and then all of a sudden got a ton of offers. He gained 12 offers after his sophomore season, and he ended up throwing for 2,200 yards and 33 touchdowns, and that was only in 9 games. Because of that and his physical measurables, he was considered a 5-star recruit, and eventually dropped a top 5, which included Alabama, Georgia, Miami, Oregon, and Tennessee. This recruitment was definitely super national, and also somewhat controversial. He decided to choose the Volunteers after a meeting with some sort of NIL agency, and apparently he signed a deal with Spire Sports Group that could make him over $9 million in 3 years while at Tennessee. Sure, the money stuff was ridiculous, but The Athletic did make a good point. They said, quote, "If a collective of college football boosters really did throw in to pay 7 figures for an NIL deal, it makes sense that Nico's the one guy of the group that you would choose." Definitely Tennessee was a popular school to go to at the time, as they would later have a breakout 2022 season, and Josh Heupel was now seen as a quarterback whisperer. Plus, I guess Tennessee had the money, the pageantry, and the competition in the SEC. Nico was listed as a 5-star recruit, the #2 quarterback, and the 3rd best player in the class of 2023. Scouts compared him to Marcus Mariota, so how would he do when he got to Tennessee? When you pay that kind of money for a starting quarterback, what are you expecting to get out of him? Well, you're hoping to probably at least get 10 wins, a college football playoff appearance, and then hopefully get sent off to the NFL. So far, Nico has been on that path, as during his freshman season, he ended up being a backup to Joe Milton, but would start in their game against Iowa and would have 4 touchdowns. Going into 2024, he would now take over as the full-time starter and would end up having an up-and-down season, to be honest. He had a total of 2,600 yards with 19 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, and he also played in 13 games. He completed 63.8% of his passes, and his best passing night was in their game against Chattanooga with 314 yards, and his best scoring night was 4 touchdowns against Vanderbilt. Honestly, he left a lot to be desired in some of their games, and most especially in their road matchup against Ohio State in the playoff. Nico did not look prepared, he didn't look poised, and they ended up getting blown out in the shoe. This was kind of ridiculous, but everyone gave him slack because it was his first year starting, and surely he would get better. He was the unquestioned starter going into 2025, But then over the last couple of days, everything got flipped on its head. It was reported Saturday morning, April 12th, that Josh Heupel and the Volunteers were moving on from each other. They're moving on from the redshirt sophomore quarterback, and he was shown the door. Tennessee finally decided to part ways with Nico, as apparently he was in contract negotiations for a new NIL deal on Thursday. He then no-showed at practice on Friday morning and didn't communicate with the Tennessee coaching staff throughout the day on Friday. I've seen a ton of tweets and Reddit posts about this as well, and it seems like things were always somewhat shaky. Did he commit to Tennessee because of the amount of money he was making in NIL? And if he did, he wasn't all that great at holding his end of the bargain. Apparently he didn't like showing up to socials or giving autographs, and his dad at times was a PR nightmare, as he ended up having a bad incident with a reporter that sort of went national. Pete Thamel said, quote, "Nico missed meetings in practice on Friday. This was the driver of this decision." It was also widely reported that this all took Tennessee coaches and players by surprise. As I said, Nico was not in contact with the Volunteers coaching staff on Friday, and then On3 reporter Pete Nakos ended up saying that he entered the portal. I mean, this is obvious if he was shown the door, but I guess for formality's sakes, he's in the portal. 24/7 Sports already has him listed as the #1 quarterback in the portal over guys like John Mateer and Carson Beck, and honestly, I guess it makes sense, but at this point, who's going to want the guy? Before we talk about some of the destinations though, I want to give my thoughts on the matter. One, I think it's both good and bad. Starting with the bad, I don't like where college football is headed, where these guys are getting this much money, they're deciding to hold out, they're actively trying to leverage more money from schools, and just the lack of loyalty. But again, it is a business now, and also many will claim that the NCAA held these guys hostage, but it has to be somewhere in the middle. It can't be a free-for-all, and it also can't be a hostage situation. Personally, I think this is kind of good though, because I think it finally will force some addressing of this stuff. I think finally the NCAA, or at least some authority of power, will have to come in here and make some rules, regulations, or at least guidelines. No longer are we going to be able to get away with this stuff, and this whole Nico situation might finally make it all come crumbling down. There definitely needs to be regulation, there needs to probably be some sort of salary cap, and at minimum, in my opinion, there's got to be some sort of contract. I personally think that would help out the transfer portal a lot and would stop all these guys from moving around and doing all these random things all the time. I think it's quite annoying, and that will offer some stability and some obedience for these guys. But it's still a lot more bad than good, but Nico will probably end up getting his money regardless. There are a couple of programs who need a starting quarterback or have the NIL funding to take a risk on a guy like this. Ultimately, we have no idea his character, and only a coaching staff will really be able to know that. But here are some schools that I thought of. Again, I can't give you a rhyme or a reason for why I think he could go here, as this is just all hypothetical. I don't know how scholarship numbers look, how NIL funds look, or any of that stuff, but ultimately the first school I came up with was UCLA, as they definitely need a better quarterback than what they have. UCLA has struggled to field a good player since Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and with Nico being from the area, it would make sense for him to go back, be with up-and-coming coach Tino Sunseri, and maybe go ball out on the West Coast. UCLA fits his vibe, and I think they would happily take him. I don't know if they have the money though. The second school I came up with was Texas A&M, as I know they have Marcel Reed, but he only started a couple of games last year, and he's still a bit unproven. The main reason why I say that is because they have the money. They've proven with their 2022 class and their portal classes in general that they have plenty of money and might be able to pay up for a guy like this. Except at this point in the season, I think there is an SEC clause where they cannot transfer interconference at this time, but again, I don't really know. The third school that everyone's talking about is USC, as they have Jaden Mayava and Hussein Longstreet battling it out for that job, but they sort of lack an experienced, super talented option, and again, this is a high-profile school. They could probably afford to pay him, and is close to home. It's also Lincoln Riley, and we all know he doesn't really care much about this stuff. He just wants to win, and he's good with quarterbacks. The fourth school I came up with is Michigan. I think there's pretty much a 0% chance that happens, but again, their best option is a true freshman in Bryce Underwood, and Michigan also has proven they have the money, and they are a high-profile program that technically might need a quarterback, but I think they're 100% going to go in with Underwood. Another two schools I would throw into the mix are first Georgia, as the Bulldogs have Gunnar Stockton returning, and then two inexperienced guys in Ryan Montgomery and Ryan Puglisi. And obviously this is a high-profile program that needs a star quarterback after Carson Beck left, but they still have that whole interconference rule. I'm not sure Kirby Smart wants to deal with this headache. And three, I think they probably go in on Gunnar Stockton. Another guy I think who would be happy to put up with this is Bill Belichick at North Carolina, as he definitely needs the win, and his quarterback room is barren. You have a 6th-year quarterback who's coming off of a horrible injury, you have 2 true freshmen, and then a backup from the worst Power 4 school in America. North Carolina could definitely use a guy of his talents, and they could definitely get the money to shell out to him. Those are the immediate options that come to mind, but if worst comes to worst, I'm sure there's a lower level Power 4 school or a group of 5 school that would take him, because he obviously has NFL potential and was a good player last year. But honestly, I also think there's a 1% chance he comes back to Tennessee, as somehow the two just decide to meet in the middle, come to a resolution, and finish what they started. Again, I don't really know, but what the heck do you guys think? What do you think of this whole Nico situation? How do you think NIL and the landscape in college football gets fixed, and where do you think he'll end up? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.